We are your station, 88.9 KETR. My name is Jerrod Knight, and as always, I'm joined on Thursday morning by Mr. Bob Aikin. Sir, how are you?
Good morning, sir.
Well, I think we should jump right into it. It's time to break some things down, and while we have a lot of folks who attempt, nobody does it as best as good as you do.
Oh, in that case, we best stall as long as we can.
Let's try to jump into a question. We'll see where it goes from there. Do we, as Northeast Texans, as residents in Northeast Texas, folks who are far removed from a lot of the troubles and woes of the government, this federal budget, and even the state budget in a lot of cases, do we have a stake in these state and federal budgets?
The short answer is yes, and the long answer is besides state employees who work for our local institution of higher learning and federal contractors who work over around Majors Field, where I would say that there is an even wider net that casts out there besides people who sell stuff to the state and federal recipients of state and federal paychecks, and among other things, your bank accounts. Stop and think about when you look at what the securities are and what the collateral for CDs, for just for basic deposits, they take a big chunk of what banks own in assets, or U.S. Treasury notes and bonds. If there is a solution to the federal budget that does not entail increasing the federal debt ceiling, you got a real problem paying interest on further debt. So we'll get into that over probably about another 2 weeks. This little deal that they did between the House and the Senate this week bought them another 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks until early April.
So why can't they just keep doing that? Why can't they just keep putting it off?
They absolutely could. And there's a strategy there. If you want to hold the cuts to a minimum, you keep spending the budget down to where, for instance, all of the allocation from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to worthy activities like this, they're all encumbered or actually expended for the year. For personnel budgets at every federal agency, the more you spend and let the year run, there's just that much less flexibility in terms of what gets cut.
Right.
Now, I would, by way of segue out of that, there is as we like to do by giving touts of new and improved websites for people to take a look at.
Okay.
Over the years, the Federal Reserve System, whose periodic reports are followed by bankers and investors, not just here but worldwide, has produced these dry as dust reports that come out that they are required to, either by law or by their own regulation, make available to the public. They've gotten pretty good in the last 5 or 10 years about getting them online and where you can actually access. For instance, if you want to separate the political rhetoric from the reality on debt, on how much is out there, what future debt service requirements are, not just for the federal government, but for state governments, for corporations, indeed for household debt, for all sorts of things. You can make a lot more sense out of this, and it has not been too difficult to access. Well, beginning on the 28th of March, when you go to federalreserve.org and click to balance sheets,
right,
you'll be able to manipulate there. And if you don't want to go through several different screens and you want to see what the impact is of various changes in interest rates, of just what debt service requirements are for individuals, for corporations, indeed for the federal government itself. I'm looking forward to it as an exercise in recreational mathematics,
right.
But it's also something that, from just getting a wider dissemination of information that's important to those who are inclined to pursue it. And I do not recommend somebody doing this if they're not if this is not just right at the top of their list.
Right, sure.
But I would suggest that looking at the balance sheet is a good place to start with just reviewing the events of this past week in Austin and in Washington. This little tug of war between the legislative leadership in both houses, not just in the House, and the governor's office. The leadership wins the next round with a big tug on the rope, and the governor went stumbling along with them by acquiescing to dipping into the rainy day fund.
Right.
Now the Koch brothers and other rich people of their inclination, and all the Tea Partiers who they helped support and organize, have been adamantly opposed to dipping into the rainy day fund, and Perry's gone along with them. They're tight.
Right.
And a lot of this just has to do with, again, the Grover Norquist idea of shrinking government down to such a size, as he likes to poetically put it, strangle it or drown it in the bathtub. Well, that ain't going to happen, because there's a lot of pushback occurring, not just from school superintendents and school board members, who are, many of whom, enraged at Perry's comments that it's their fault that they're short on money, and nursing home operators, just to name two well-known classifications of people who can get a pretty good crowd together.
Sure.
There's also this little matter that now you've got some higher ed people who are furious with Perry over not just his board appointments, but what they're trying to do with higher ed budgets, particularly with regard to the, as they like to put it, the flagship Tier 1 universities and their research function. A well-known in orange blood circles tax lawyer in Fort Worth, who is arguably the best tax lawyer in the state, wrote a letter to the entire active list of Texas X's and other community leaders around the state, deploring what's going on here and urging them to take action, contact the governor, their members of the legislature, and that sort of thing. It's been a while since they've done that. It's usually pretty effective, because the people that are involved with it, it's not just some old orange bloods who are among the usual suspects. Also in this group are David Geffen from Hollywood, Rex Tillerson from Exxon Mobil, Michael Dell, who lent his name to your computer, the Joe Jamel, world's richest trial lawyer.
Right.
This is pushback of a significant nature,
right,
and which we'll watch, and then we're going to pick up on where the next deal is on the federal budget in debt ceiling about the time they are going to have to do that. Tune in next time.
I think you'll have to. Right here.
So there. If that's our look at, just saw the great show from Laugh-In from over 40 years ago, as Laugh-In looks at the news, and we've just looked at the news, folks.
That's right. Tune in next week for Breaking It Down with Mr. Bob Aikin. Sir, thank you so much for joining.
We'll do it again.
We are your station, 88.9 KETR.